to one.
Well, we will have fun without you.
I know. Oh no, I'm sorry. I said 7:30.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Okay, cool. I think I'm actually live. Well, let's do it then. And maybe if we get to a good place by the time Anthony leaves and it's small, we'll wrap up a little bit early. My excuse is I have a 1-year-old baby at home.
Yeah.
Sleep is precious. Or maybe not. We'll see how we go. Okay, so we have someone at home. Ali, thanks for joining. So usually I like to do agendas and intros. If you're watching from home, please leave a quick intro on the whiteboard. And it's nice to know, your name, and we know at least one person. Also, your sort of level of programming experience, generally. And also, if there's anything in particular you want to get out of class tonight, actually, or just like one thing that you do want to get out of class, or why you're interested in helping me tailor class. This is a very broad topic, so there's lots of stuff we can talk about. I have like one thing I want to talk about. So I guess what we'll do is we'll just go around and we'll collect a couple of different things and we'll kind of explore those topics. And a quick pitch for RailsSchool. Most of the people here, everybody here has been here a lot, but I'll go over it anyway. RailsSchool is about 3 years old. It's a sustainable community class we teach here at RailsSchool. I'm sorry, Noisebridge. I'm also tired. It's been a long day. And it's we don't teach a curriculum. It's pretty ad hoc. We're volunteer teachers. And also today, just note that Noisebridge was closed until 7, so I didn't get to do my usual minimal pre-class preparation. So it'll be more exploratory than normal. All right, so my thing I want to get out of class is I want to talk about stubbing, external services, and tests, and / test performance. Cool. Awesome. So Ali, please throw your thing on there, and then we'll go around. Anthony. I know who you are.
Oh, you want me to start?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Basically, what's your thing? You guys know each other, right?
Oh, what we want to get out of it?
Yeah, what do you want to get out of it? Yeah, Anthony's been out. Yeah.
I don't know what I want to get out of it.
Well, think quickly. Is there something in testing you want to get better at?
Yeah, I think I just want to get better at it overall. Like getting in the habit of starting from a test-driven approach.
Cool. So test first. Cool. There's some tricks for that, actually. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Rowan.
Rowan, right. Rowan.
So the last year I've been finally writing some test code, which is good. But I want to get better. I want to understand some conventions better. I care about performance and stubbing. There's lots of ways to stub, I found. Are we going to be using RSpec or maybe tests? Yeah,
good point. Yeah, I'll talk about the stack. Yeah, RSpec for sure. Yeah.
So I think get a little bit more of the details of all the stubbing and levels.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Ooh, I'm not sure we're going to get into like double.
Okay.
Frankly, just because that's pretty new to me too. But definitely encourage. But we will get into when I mean stubbing, I mean in particular not as much RSpec's native stubbing features, more sort of like mocking out request to external API calls. Yeah, I know it's confusing, and I might be being sloppy with the language. And if we have time, maybe we'll get into just some more basic RSpec native stubbing.
Do you think we'll have any time to do stuff like Selenium or Captain or any of that stuff?
Yeah, we're gonna. I hope to actually. Yeah, we'll see. Actually, that might be too much, to be honest. The Hangout link isn't working, so. Seriously?
It's the same one.
It's the same one. The problem is it's breaking.
Oh, okay, I see. just have them, yeah, copy the text and paste it as browser.
Okay. Copy. Want to make sure I do this right. How about paste and match style?
Yeah, that's
Whoa. All right. Cool. Okay, cool. That's a pretty good list. So hopefully Ali will work. Ali will be able to join us. Up there.
But I'm going to be doing this in the context of Ruby on Rails or just Ruby.
Yeah, Ruby on Rails. Yeah, okay, cool. So,
if we could start some active.
oh man, sure. I've never done that either.
I did recently in Japan.
What's that?
I done recently in Japan.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's funny. I've never really, only rarely have I found the need or real desire to do a lot of kind of stubbing out internal Rails stuff. Recently, I've wanted to do it, but so far I've gotten pretty far without having it. And maybe it's I need to be testing better.
No, I think what happens, like, if in your code you have something that depends on like a where, like we're not an association, right? So if you have an association in your code,
Yeah.
you don't want to call a database bomb at all, then
Oh, you can stub out that association just to keep from hitting the database. Yeah, I just freaking hit the database. Yeah. But that's really interesting. I mean, that would be something I would look at, for increasing test performance. I found for me the biggest bottleneck in test performance is usually not those things. It's usually Capybara and external services and things like that.
we have video.
Yeah, that's because I need to share my screen.
I feel like now that connected to the noise visual, someone turn on the camera.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly. Okay, there you go, Ali. Sorry about that. So there was a slow day. I spent all day refactoring this big thing I spent the last 2 days writing, so I'm fried. Okay, cool. So we're just going to get started. Ali, leave a list, leave one of your goals for the class, if you would, in that list, and I'll check back in a second. So let's get started. I thought for the external service, it might be fun to use the BART train departure API, which is pretty cool, pretty easily available. So why don't we make a BART train departure app? And so do Rails new BART. Can we call it BART? Does that work? And then say skip test framework. And we're going to say that because we're going to use RSpec instead of mini test. And so let's do this. Mini test is all the rage right now. I know. And I used it in this one project because I was like, this is all the rage. I should use mini test.
What was the skip test?
Skip test framework. Sorry, as soon as there it is. Can you see that? Is that big enough?
Yeah.
And then we'll install RSpec in a minute. So I found Minitest is awesome, except it just doesn't have nearly as many rich kind of lifecycle hooks as RSpec does. So things like cleaning the database between examples, and I think probably for mocking services, for dealing with Capybara business. In general, it's just a lot harder to configure how Minitest runs versus RSpec. That was my experience.
What was the command? The skip
Skip test framework.
Skip test framework.
I think that is what it is. Let's see. And it's taking forever because we're probably all hitting. It might be skip test unit. No test framework. I think I might have told you wrong.
Okay. So we are going to remove that.
Yep.
Okay. So no test framework?
Exactly. So Rails new, and then we're going to say looks like we can just do big T. And you could tell it. So hopefully it actually bundles this time. So it didn't really want to last time. What can we talk about while this is installing? Let's look about how we're going to install RSpec. So RSpec, of course, can be used with regular Ruby, but we're gonna use Rails tonight, mostly because I really want to play with that external request stubbing stuff, and you're most likely to do that in a Rails application. So RSpec Rails is a gem. When we can finally bundle, we will do that, and then we're going to do it. Also as a generator to install stuff, and it puts it in the spec directory. Interesting thing about RSpec is that there's two helpers. There's a spec helper and a Rails helper. Does anyone know the difference between the two? Just out of curiosity. This is a relatively recent addition to RSpec, I think in RSpec 3.
I mean, I would imagine one would be including methods to help in the test themselves, and that would be initializing RSpec and configuring the else. I imagine.
Close, yeah. Well, they're both configured. They're both basically initializers. The difference is that spec helper is called all the time, or a spec helper is supposed to be where you put your stuff that is needed basically for RSpec, and Rails is where you put the Rails specific things. And the idea is if you're looking at test performance, then in some tests that don't require Rails, whatever that might be, like if you had, some library helper function or something like that, right, that really didn't need Rails, you could not use the Rails helper.
Oh, I see.
And then reduce the load time of all that. Because it's loading, it's loading the environment up like constantly. So I've never done that, but it's nice to follow, think about, if the thing that you're configuring or setting up or initializing doesn't actually have to do with Rails, then put it in spec helper. And if it does have to do with Rails, so if we set up Capybara, for example, to do sort of like JavaScript UI testing, we'd of course put it in the Rails helper. So, looks like we're done here. And there's not much general, so we can go ahead and do what they say here in the gem file. So I can move the CD into my directory. Notice we also have the Spring business running and all that, and that's sort of a new thing with Rails. To be honest, I really haven't messed with that. It's something on my list. I want to get better at my test tooling so that my tests automatically run after I change files and things like that. So that might be a future class, just sort of like testing tooling. Lately, that's become sort of a choke for me in my workflow, but I'm kind of bad at it. I just run them manually. Okay, now we should have a gem file, and it wants us to put the stuff in the development and test group.
Right. When you're doing no test framework, did it still create all the tests directives? It did for you. If we check in there.
Nope.
No. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. You can just remove it. Yeah, like the default rake task might be taken over by Minitest, but it won't make a difference. You can just do RSpec. Yeah, who cares? It won't matter for this one.
So, Greg, what was the gem?
RSpec. RSpec. The actual thing in your gem file line is RSpec-Rails, and you don't really need to do the squiggly 3. It'll pull the newest version down. I'm just lazy and copying and pasting it. So let's bundle install that and go back and see. Cool. So that was easy. I already have it installed probably from some other thing. And then we're going to do this. By the way, BE, I have alias the bundle exec. Does anyone know why bundle exec is awesome? You should always use it. In fact, it'll rarely make a difference, but every once in a while it does, and it sucks.
It makes sure you're using the right versions of the
Yeah. I used to have this thing where I had an Octopress blog, and it was this like really out-of-date version of Rake. I didn't feel like updating because I didn't care. Every time I went into that thing to like Rake deploy, it would barf because I was using some like really new version of Rake, you know, from my work, and this thing was locked on some old antique version. Sorry, if I didn't do bundle exec Rake. If I did bundle exec Rake deploy, I was very happy in it. It pretended it was 4 years ago inside of itself, and everything was okay. Cool. So has everyone got some RSpec install stuff going? Cool. Sweet. So let's spend a little bit of time just kind of poking around at the config files, but we won't spend that much time because y'all can read. So there's some mocking stuff here. There's really not that much. It looks like this is really interesting. These are actually, this block is commented out by default, and there's some stuff that you want in here, in my opinion. The random order. This is pretty sweet. Let's take a minute to talk about slow tests. Have you ever had like this test suite run where like this one test just takes freaking ever, but you don't know which one it is? There's RSpec has really awesome built-in. You can just use the profile flag and prints like the 10 lowest tests, which is super helpful. So that right there for, you know, if you're for test suite speed, I definitely encourage, you know, using that and just optimizing the slowest ones methodically. So cool.
So we're going to comment that one?
Should we? Let's do it. Yeah. So let's remove this block comment here. It seems to want us to like, it seems to think that this is some sort of block of reasonable defaults. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense, but yeah, see. Okay, cool. It looks like there's some better semantics for just running individual examples. That's definitely a really nice thing to be able to do when you're working with tests, not running the whole freaking file, but just running one example from within the file. So I can, and we can come up, I'll try to give some examples of how that can be useful. Cool. So let's build up some stuff so we can actually start testing. Let's go back to the gem file real quick, and we're going to add one thing. We're going to add gem pry rails, I think it is. Yeah, cool. Have you all used pry?
So I'm kind of curious, what does pry rails do differently
Then
than
Bybug, one thing is it works, because I think Bybug is like deprecated and hard to use with new versions. Yeah, I think so. The cool thing about pry that I don't use that much is it gives you this kind of amazing syntax and kind of concept of moving within your code. So if you drop a binding, let's say you have a class, let's say you write your own class to do something, right? And you, or an active record cluster, whatever, and you drop a binding.pry in this method to see what's going on. You can actually type ls to see all the methods available. And you can like CD into different levels of the class hierarchy and actually see what's going on like that. So people use it like that for a lot. I don't think so. I might be wrong. Yeah. I don't want to say that I've like empirically looked at Bybug. Yeah. I just frankly started using Pry as a debugger because of that point. Let me try to think. I have used just maybe Bybug or just the regular Rails debugger in projects. And I've definitely missed Pry, but not for anything that I felt like I couldn't do. I mean, like, not like it was like really like impacting my workflow. It was like the formatting was just kind of wonky. And yeah, so you can use Bybug if you want. Cool. So let's make some stations. And we're going to use the Rails scaffolding to just make some quick code. So does anyone know how to scaffold? I don't. Okay, cool.
There's G stuff. And then
Big, like that?
Like that, yeah, station, and you could probably
Little station or big station? No, you can generate a model, but I want to scaffold. Like, yeah, the whole thing. I'm sorry, maybe that's what you said.
I think it's probably a big station, but and then you can have.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. So station name, like that, right? That's what we're doing. What else do we need it for a station?
We should probably look at the API.
You know, we should, and I'm looking at it. I'm not sure we're going to get much implemented on that Friday. I might be a little over optimistic. Sometimes I can do that. So, but it seems like there's a ton of.
Yeah, the other thing is that whole thing is XML.
Yeah, it is. This is exactly right. HTTP party though kind of magically does it for you. But we definitely will at least give you guys like the pointers about how to do the stuff, and you can read the article, and it's pretty simple. Name, string. Is there anything else? We need to make up some stuff, guys, so we can actually test something. How about station type string? Okay, getting creative here. Above ground. Can you do Boolean? Cool. Does that work? Age. Integer. All right, fair. There's at least some stuff we could test.
I think we probably have to say Boolean.
Yeah.
Might.
Let's see what happens. Something happened. Do I have to create the data? Whoop! I can't create it, but I might be able to create it. I think I have to run the migration. Okay, so we're just going to open up the migration. Okay. Yay, we're happy. Now we have station. Outside of relationship, station has many. I could think of many fun things part stations have many multiples of. Rats. They do have trains. Yeah, okay, cool. So Rails, G, scaffold, train. How do you scaffold a relationship? Author. So it looks like I just do. Oh no, I just actually do post AD. I just do it kind of manually. Okay, cool.
There's a way to do it manually. You might be able to say.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Just today, I wrote my first migration that didn't like manually specify the integer.
Yeah.
You know, because it does the same thing. I'm so used to. I did like the t.relation relation or something. Name, station, neighbor, city. Why? I'm sorry.
Well, the trains would like,
Trains do not have cities.
they would have like a start location and end location.
Very nice. Yeah. The length.
We might want to use that.
Fair enough. Yeah. Length blank.
We have the station ID and the start station string.
Yeah, that's like the start and end station idea that Anthony
What's
had.
the station ID?
That is,
Kinda weird.
that's all right, whatever. Station ID is how we're gonna associate one station with many trains.
Oh, that's like what station the trains in currently, I guess.
Oh, yeah, exactly. This is, yeah, thank you. This is a real-time app. Yeah, stretch your imagination, if you will. We just need a relationship. We just need a relationship.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about the product. It makes sense. Who suggested a station has many trains? Was it you? So cool. So now we have some stuff. Should I type B at first?
No, BE, as in bubbles.
Oh, all right.
Probably be safe, just like that doing all.
Yeah.
Until something goes wrong.
All right. So now what are we gonna do?
Up to the bank.
Did you build the association into the?
Not yet.
We have done nothing except run the migrations. So what should our first next step be? First next step.
I'm gonna go build an association.
Wrong answer. I'm hoping Anthony. The answer is to write a test.
Oh, you want to build an association yet between station and train?
No, if we're really gonna get in the habit of writing tests first. Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not pedantic about this. Well, one of the best reasons to write tests first is it just gets yourself in a little bit of a groove and a rhythm, I think. And especially if I'm building stuff like this, I'll just open the tests on one side of my screen and the file on the other side, and just like, so let's make a file. And look at this. We have it magically working here. And it's funny because I think in previous versions of RSpec, they haven't had this delete thing. Because I've been in projects where you look at the spec and there's like 84 files and they all say like, you know, pending, add some examples or something like that. Or like to do. But the first thing here is we have this pending thing, and this can be super handy for writing tests first. Like if you're not exactly sure how something's going to work, or you just want to turn something off for the time being, but you can still get in the habit of writing the test first by simply adding this pending block. And basically you can put this anywhere you want, and anything kind of below it, right? You can put it with any kind of these it or describe blocks. It'll actually run that example, so you can see if it passes or fails. But it won't actually give you red. It'll give you yellow. And then you can give it an example. So this is a super useful thing. Cool. So let's write some tests. the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out how we're going to actually make a station. Does anyone use Factory Girl? Fair amount? Seem good? Should we go ahead and just get Factory Girl going real quick?
Thoughts on factories versus fixtures?
I have never used fixtures actually. Have you?
I think it was on project that used it, but I wasn't too deeply testing that.
Yeah.
There was always lots of arguments one way or the other.
I definitely did. Yeah, I was on a, gosh, where was I? I was on a project recently that had some extensive fixtures, and I had to manipulate them, and they seemed fine. I kind of thought that sort of Factory Girl sort of won that debate, but it seems like with testing, there's been kind of a big resurgence to go back to like mini testing fixtures. But we're just going to use Factory Girl real quick. We won't labor it because we all know how to use it. But you can get Factory, you know, we could do a class on Factory Girl itself. Yeah, actually. I put it in development and test so I can get it in my shell, which is super handy. So what does Factory Girl want us to do? And we need to read this getting started. We're going to do a little bit of wiring. Configure our test suite. So we need to open up probably spec helper, right? And we're just going to see what Factory Girl wants us to do. The first thing is we definitely want to do this. Inside this configure block, we're going to do, I'm going to paste that line. And this is going to let us have some syntactic shortcuts to using Factory Girl, which is super useful. And then you can see we do that. And we're also going to do this. It's funny that database cleaner is in here, so maybe we should set up database cleaner again real quick too, because it might want us. I don't think so. Let's see what happens though. So what we're doing here is we're adding. This is something that I'm pretty sure an example of what Minitest does not have actually. This config before sweet business, but I might be wrong. So we're going to lint our factories before we start. This is a super helpful thing to do. Make sure your factories are valid. This tends to catch a lot of errors with associations. If you break an association or something like that, your factories actually won't lint. So it's kind of handy. Also, if you're working on a team, make sure no one does anything stupid. And then it also wants us to do the database cleaner. Yeah, okay, it tells us we have to add database cleaner. And let's go ahead and do that because this is my standard approach. What database cleaner does is it just cleans out your database between test runs. And it's super helpful because it really sucks to have your tests fail because, whoops. Your database is full of artifacts from some of the things.
Doesn't clean the database on every test run?
I know, right?
That would be kind of required, I think.
I know, it is one of those really kind of strange things where you think, there we go. Rails will just kind of have that installed, but it just doesn't. It's one of the gaps in it. So all I did was add database cleaner to the gem file and just copy these config lines from the README, essentially.
So looking at the README, So maybe I should fix it.
You got, no, it's not in the README. You got to go into the getting started link on the README to go to the Ruby doc.
Ah,
Yeah, which is super weird. So it's annoying.
okay,
Cool. So we can put factories anywhere, but by default, Factory Girl will look for them either in a factories.rb file inside your spec directory or in spec/factories/whatever. In practice, I always break mine up. It just keeps it a lot more sane. But let's just do a file here, one today. So we're going to say factorygirl.define and give that a block. And then we define a station with a block. And then we're going to. Yep. And then I'm going to do one more gem. I'm moving kind of fast today. Everyone seems pretty. I'm going to install the annotate gem, which I can't work without. Why in a minute? Yeah. And annotate. Oh, it's funny. It will. Watch this. So let's remove our big factory file and make a directory and do station. Actually, let's do stations already. And then same thing. And now we're going to do an annotate should find that factory and give us this, which I find super handy. Did you put it, did you go to a stations.rb file instead of having just one overall factory file?
So I went against factories directory and looked inside of the station.rb.
Yeah, weird. Did you do the factory girl.define? Did block before you hit annotate? Yeah. I think that's what it looks for. I've always wondered what it looks for. Annotate finds a lot of weird stuff. It finds all kinds of different model related things. So name. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Cool. This is good, right? If you use Faker, you would never use Faker here. Anybody use Faker? Yeah. Don't use it in your factories. It's a debate, and you'll see. But the idea is that your test should be deterministic. The data that you use in your test shouldn't randomly change unless you do it specifically for a test with randomly changing data. I've definitely run into problems with it. The counter argument. So to push that point further, it's like then your tests are going to fail, and you're going to be really hard to debug because they're going to fail because some data was different that one run, and it's not going to be the next. Some people argue it's like, but you could also say, well, I want my test to fail because that means I have these edge cases with my data that I need to resolve. So,
would you be, as long as you're comparing against a factor, not against a string, you should be fine, right?
What do you mean?
So, like, say you have a station, and the name you did Faker.
Yeah.
So, like in your spec, unless you're saying expect blah dot text to equal downtown Berkeley, right?
Oh yeah, no, that one, yeah.
Blah dot text to equal station.
Yeah, even so, you might have some weird things because that name might just have a special character in it one time that you didn't anticipate and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. So, but that is a debatable point though. So you'll see. But here's something we do sometimes. So let's say, okay. Also, good advice is to keep your factories, and this is straight from ThoughtBot, the minimum you need to have your models pass validation tests. So by best practices, actually, we're not going to add anything to this. And I've definitely come to believe that I was definitely the opposite, and I've come to believe that they speak the truth. It just makes testing a lot easier because you don't have all that crap kind of coming in, being injected into every example. You inject attributes. And
So you're saying, like, as you build out your test suite, your factories will become more complex. Start out with the most basic.
yeah, and always keep them to be the most basic you need. The basic thing that they should be the most basic you need to just pass the minimal model validations and not really change them. If you need to add more attributes to things, you do that in the actual test file. You can also, does anyone know about the blocks here? Do you guys know about this? In order to get, if I just did this,
Example one to the definition problem.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. When like the factors are like linted or something. Yeah. But you can actually give this a block, and the block will be executed, and the output of that block will be used every single time you make a new one. And so, if you do have something like this, and you really want this, or you can do that. Cool.
Okay, so do we install the Gem Factor Girl or Factor Girl Rails?
Factor Girl Rails, I think. Nope, Gem Factor Girl. I'm sorry, I just installed Factor Girl. Yep. Oh, maybe we should have used Factor Girl Rails.
I'm not sure what those are.
Automatic factory definition loading is the only Rails specific feature. We might have to switch to Gem. All right, so let's add one more factor and fire up annotate just to get us when it's not going to do anything. Of course. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say station, which is this weird syntax you use for declaring relationships. And we should have our factory set up. Cool. Let's pause here for a quick second. But I think I'm just going to see if our, oh no, database cleaner is mad. No known ORM detected. Do I need to do something? Okay. It's really weird. I'm just gonna maybe just for the sake of the class remove database cleaner and move on to some other stuff because
I think we need to worry about too much.
yeah.
Following up our evidence.
Thought it seemed like a neat thing to do, but get that out of there. Uninitialized constant factor girl.
What did you try to run that?
The just RSpec spec. I'm just gonna switch to factor girl rails. Yeah, there's an empty spec file that should run.
Oh, so I'm trying to do RSpec.
We just have to require a factor though,
Oh,
somewhere. So we're gonna do the tried and true. Yeah, thought so.
man,
Seems better. All right, yay! Lint is helping us out. We didn't even get to run the test. We failed so badly. Lint is saying, it's like, yo, there's no such thing as a train doesn't have a station. Probably because we don't have a train yet or a station model. So the first thing we're going to need to do now is we're actually going to need to set up the model associations, even to get the factories to lint. So let's make a station. Now we already have one. We don't need to have many yet, so let's do that. Because then we can do that with the specs. So belongs to station. Pretty simple. And they lint, and everything in the world is pending, but nothing failed. So our test suite is sane. Cool. Try some tests. Cool. So finally, first we need to make a station. I use let. Who knows what let does? Yeah, it's lazy, exactly. Do you know how to make it eager? Bang, cool. Yeah, so this means that there's a station that springs into existence from the moment of this line being executed in line 17. It'll always be there through the example. That makes a new station every single time you call it, which is important to Grok. Notice we have the type model when we're telling our spec what it is. And I usually do describe blocks. You can also use context. It's a synonym. So context is the same thing as describe. I prefer describe.
So when would you use context as opposed to describe?
It is, I think it's just stylistic differences.
You know, I kind of remember reading that you, instead of it always being described, you can switch between the two to give you a little bit more of like a little bit more of to show the difference, so that you're not just nesting describe blocks. You know, you can use describe and then context interchangeably, but that way you're not, it's not just describe.
That's not so powerful.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think it's very useful, but
Is that because it's sharing context?
yeah, shared context I think are basically just like shared examples.
So what we do in our project is we share context. Like if you have about data to set up, you know, we can say we have like an online learning platform where we have a course, so we want a course to be fully stocked with assessments and teachers and students. We can make like a fully stocked course context, and we can include that in any of the specs.
Nice.
But I'm not sure if we probably could do the same thing using the Skype keyboard. I'm just wondering if there's anything different between them.
It looks like that here, yeah, share context is cool. I've actually never done this. It looks super cool. It looks like that context and include context and shared context are just two totally different things. Yeah, because it looks like you define it like this and you bring it in like this. Whereas here it's just like there's no difference. But I think Anthony's right. Like, you could use it to be more semantic in your test. I don't particularly find it to be that useful, but if you do, you should do it for sure.
Because I feel like if you'd be using those shared context, it would just be confusing yourself to having to.
That's also very valid. Yeah, I probably would not use the context block if I was using share, especially if it was like a major concept I had to keep in my head as I was navigating my specs. Cool. Relation tests are kind of boring. Does anybody actually do them? I'm just out of curiosity. Like test the model relations.
Oh, there's actually a way to do it. There's an algorithm.
There's a what?
Should matches.
Yeah. Then you can do it. Should have. That's what you do with shoulda matchers. Shoulda matchers are deprecated though.
Yeah.
There might be like an expect way of doing it.
There is, yeah. There's a couple of different expect ways of doing it. Although I finally recently I went back and read about why shoulda matchers are deprecated, and it's because there's one tiny really weird edge case where they'll return an unexpected result. Yeah, so I've stopped using them moving forward for myself, but like you might read about why they're deprecated. And it seems like the right call to make because, if you use expect, it's always going to work. And with shoulda, you got to know. I don't remember what the example is, but yeah, they get funky, but it's a super edge case. So we're going to do it should have many train, just the old it block. And then expect I think I don't know if I can do that. I thought I did something like this today, actually. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Like that.
So let's just run this one file. We're just going to give it that. We're going to give our spec the file. Whoa, cool. It appears to have actually worked. How cool is that? There's a much more complicated way you can do with like all this like active record like inflection like. So if you Google like RSpec test model relationships,
Yeah.
you get this like you reflect on associations t.macro. You get this stuff.
Better approach would be to use a shoulda.
Yeah, except not anymore. But this is super cool because apparently we can do it anyway. So has many trains, and we're going to be green. Oh. Looks like it didn't work.
What?
Expected station to respond to has many, question mark. Weird.
Well,
Maybe I didn't save the file in time. Oh.
that's what I mean, maybe. I mean, like what we do as that kind of calculation, we don't explicitly say it has many we just expect blood trains to be.
Yeah, we could do that.
We could expect that train.
Totally. Yeah, you could argue that this is actually overkill too.
Yes.
You could say you could also do this.
Yeah.
And you could argue this is maybe a more higher level test because you say you don't really care how it's working under the hood. You just want to be able to be like station.train should equal some stuff.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. There are actually measures for.
There we go. Cool. Just keep this implementation of it. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, cool. So we got some basic testing going on here. Where do we want to take it from here? Should we get into some fancier stuff? let's try to stub something. How does that sound? Cool. First, and Rowan, help me if I'm going to come up with a contrived example. We can decide if this is even a good freaking example. So we're going to do, we're going to add a crazy hard math and do sleep 5. Return a big number. Cool. We're going to pretend that we're doing some like crazy, huge, computationally intense work here as part of our core business requirements involving calculating different node lengths on a discrete graph theory plot. Right? We do that all the time. It's normal implementation.
Is the 5 maybe less than like 5 seconds or something?
You're doing contract work for LPLs.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Vector analysis for the nuclear field.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just need to, and we
You need 30 digits.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Another calculation.
Actually, I don't know if, I think it takes seconds.
5.
I think sleep takes seconds.
Because that makes sense.
Yeah, because it's Ruby. It probably just calls, yeah, anyway. It calls .seconds on anything it gets probably. So let's run our station spec again, and nothing's going to happen because we so first we're going to write a test for that. Really, we should have written a test before we wrote the method. We're going to write describe, and we're going to use the syntax of the pound sign. I really, more and more, I think like clear patterns of testing is really useful. Pound sign is really nice to describe instance methods. I've used this to describe class methods. I've also seen this to describe class methods or scopes. It's really nice. It should return the right number to equal. Okay, and we're going to comment it out so we make sure that the tests actually fail, which you always should do because I have and many other developers have shipped code with green tests that actually never turn red. Who's caught that before, right? You're like, wait a minute. What the hell? Okay, that's interesting. That didn't seem to take very long.
You know what? Those people that try to use this on Windows, it doesn't really help.
It is sleepy. Yeah, right.
So nobody uses it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
This,
I like how the sleep method returned the 5.
Yeah, cool, huh?
That's terrible. That's not cool. Let's just pass it.
What should it return, Bill? Yeah, fair enough. Ruby. That's a good tweet, actually, by the way. Ruby, sleep 5. Function returns 5. Okay, cool. So now we've got, let's yeah, exactly. Let's bump this up a little bit. So this is annoying as hell, and this kind of stuff is going to kill our freaking test suite. Right? And it wouldn't be hard to do something like this. Anthony works on an app that I wrote that in some cases does crazy numbers of freaking joins across all these tables, right? And shit takes a long time. And the test just like hit it all. And sometimes it's good, but we can do better. So what we want to do is we actually want to stub out this method. And what we want to tell RSpec is we want to be like, hey, RSpec, in the test, don't actually fire this method. We're going to give you a static value ahead of time that you're going to use for the return, right? Now, obviously, you wouldn't just want to stub out. So when would you do this, and when wouldn't you do this?
Like if you didn't really want to get a server, maybe. Like,
That's Good. Yeah, totally. You could totally use this to stub external. If you have your external service request call like wrapped up in a single method, you could stub that method out totally.
Well, if the point isn't to call the method, but
Like do something else, right? Yeah. Maybe you're doing a test that like given any return of crazy hard math, something else should happen, right? Then you would stub this out maybe. You wouldn't stub it out, of course, if you're actually writing tests for the function itself, the actual method, because you wouldn't be testing anything, in my opinion. You'd just be testing if you could configure it properly. So you want to be careful. And here, so you wouldn't exactly do what we're doing, because then we wouldn't actually be testing this, but just for the sake of, I want to hit this. Actually, a better example might be, let's see. Our order function's job is to add 1.
Yeah.
Cool. This is a better example.
That's a good idea.
This makes sense, a little bit more sense. We're stubbing this thing out because we don't, we want the output of this to be deterministic, and it doesn't really matter for the testing of the higher order function, because all we want to hear is test is this add 1 to the thing, right? Cool. It's a little contrived, granted. And also, just to be fair, I have not done a ton of this in my work. I personally don't find it to have a huge payoff, but it's a super good thing to know how to do, because it can be really useful. And I might be wrong too. I might just be missing all these incredible testing things. So what we want to do is we need to stub crazy, what do we call it? Crazy hard math. So that we can test higher order function without having the process intensive overload of building all this stuff up. So mock. How do we mock? RSpec mocks. Yeah, we get RSpec mocks with RSpec. I thought so. Okay, cool. So a double. This is super weird. You can read. A test double is an object that stands for another object in your system during a code example. I used this recently. Rowan, can you one of you guys use doubles? Yeah, tell me. I just used this and I can't remember the time I used a double, but there are some times when it's super freaking helpful. But just know that if you want to like make a fake something, if you're in your testing, you're like, yo, I really want to make a fake station that's not actually a station, you can do that. But really, we're going to look at method stubs. So here we go. We can get even fancier. Do you got the double thing?
Yeah, so usually when we're doing like an instance, like some kind of
Uh-huh.
an instance, we can do an instance of a survey instance. Present anything that is a self-contained object. It's attribute.
You double it all the time. Interesting.
All the time, but
Really? Okay. Interesting. Okay, cool. It looks like, so there's 2 ways we can stub a method. We can just stub out our normal thing like this, or we could actually make a double and stub out at the same time. So let's double and stub out of this. Well, no, let's do it this way first, just to kind of illustrate, and then we'll do it even fancier. So all we're going to do here is we're going to say allow station to receive, I think this will work, and it's and return. It's like we can pass a block or we can pass and return.
Did you see this happen?
Damn it. Okay, so well, it took seven seconds before we did that. You know, which is nice because that's what we told it to take. Whoa! Undefined method to receive. To, no, it's not to receive. It's allowed to. It's this actually. It's even crazier. It's even crazier. Ruby. That makes sense if you're a new programmer. It's completely mystifying if you're not. What the fuck is going on? Okay, so there's a method too that takes as an argument this receive thing.
Yeah.
Cool. It shaved seconds off, so we're confident that we skipped that. So that's pretty cool, right? We could totally use this for external services. Anything that's hard, we can use this, and our test speed is suddenly nice and joyfully fast. And we can do this on at a per example basis, so we have a ton of granularity there. So let's do the other thing here. What if we use let? What if we made it, well, so double takes a string, optional identifier. What is this the model name?
Yeah, so that's a model name. I haven't actually been writing anything myself. I've been doing integration tests last few weeks.
Cool. Yeah. Well, let's see if we can do this. So I think I can just override station here. And then maybe I can just say, looks like I can just do this, which is kind of cool.
Except we've now got our higher order function, which isn't defined.
Good call. Okay, so I was thinking, I kind of don't. To me, this seems like a little magical too. And just like, even if you don't know about stubbing, you're going to come along and see this, and have a pretty good idea that you're like mocking some sort of fake method onto this thing, right? To receive and return, I feel like that should be pretty obvious. If you're like a working day-to-day Ruby programmer, even if you've never encountered this, and that's why it's cool, right? Cool. We can do consecutive return values. You can return doubles. There's a bunch of really cool things. One thing I saw pretty recently in a project I was working on is this stuff. Watching to see if something else receives arguments. This is super cool, especially if you're testing side effects. I happen to be testing a bunch of workers, right? I was writing a bunch of workers that were supposed to like churn through the database and like send a bunch of mail and like text messages and stuff, right? And the mail and text messages were workers, all like, so it's basically these workers responding to other workers. So I just wanted to see if my worker would make the right calls to the other workers. That was pretty easy, right? I just kind of was able to declare, like, expect this worker to receive this method, call with these arguments, and feel pretty confident that actually things were executing as they were. And then that worker was tested, and I knew that those arguments into that worker would also produce the results I wanted. So I had this nice contractual thing. So that's a super, just remember that you can totally use RSpec to expect certain methods to be called with certain arguments. That also makes testing a lot easier, and I think a lot easier to kind of compartmentalize those like nasty, kind of like broad integration level tests.
So Brad, is that with the spike? Is the spike like a double that checks to see whether you see stuff? Is that what you're saying?
I have no idea.
I have no idea what it's about.
Verifies the given object received the expected message during the course of the test.
So just start doing that.
I've seen it done like this. Yeah.
So the invitation is a spy. So it doesn't. So we don't actually load the invitation. We just say.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I thought I implemented this. Maybe I didn't implement it, and maybe I just saw other people implement it. Maybe you have to use spy to do that.
Check it out. So at the very top, the spy invitation is the same as the double invitation as the null object. So it creates an object that's got just jack shit in it, but maps to.
Weird, yeah.
Okay. Nice.
That's super weird. Oh yeah, so you're just creating a bucket, a dumb bucket that doesn't do anything.
Exactly. The dumb bucket that responds to
whatever method it gets. Yeah. Huh. Cool. Okay. Here's another expect to receive with arguments. It's like there's a couple ways you can do it. Here's a test specific. Cool. This stuff gets pretty eye glazing. But just remember, it's not very hard. And a little bit of this, especially just mocking methods, can go a long way in making tests easier to write and faster.
What are your thoughts on the before all, before each box? That's lazy saturation versus lazy saturation.
I try to keep my tests as lazy as possible, but I'm always fighting. Like, I think what you're referring to is if you use let, you generally can't access this stuff in before each blocks. I think you can do it in before all blocks. I think. Right now I feel like tests should be as light as possible and share as little state between each other as possible. And I constantly run into this, like having to kind of set up a lot of state before a test and want to manipulate it. And I've decided that that's a smell, to be honest. And I feel like whenever I do that, my solution has worked. What I do is I try to break things into smaller describe blocks to be more semantic. And then I use late breaking let statements. Yeah, so what you can do is you can do you can actually do this. See. What are we on station? Real quick, do you guys know how to run a specific example? Yeah, you can do, or you can do E and then a string. I just copied it from that. Yeah, it's super useful if you're using binding.pry in your test that you can. And you have a bunch of tests and you want to know exactly what's going on in the failing test. You can do that one example, put your binding.pry in your controller, whatever, and see what's actually going on. Cool. So we can do this. Okay, this should work.
I know one way to do this is you do the let with the fade, around them programming. Because the thing will override the lazy one.
The bang, yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you're banging, it won't work, probably, right? That's a good question. I did say banging it. Hey, look, it did work.
I'm still a child.
You are. It did work, even with the bang, even when you banged it. But this, one of the cool things is, this is a bad example. Let's do this. And you got to do it in each.
Yeah, 'cause it's,
Oh, but it can be beautiful in some ways. But because this is lazy, though, the point is that you can declare up here, you can declare stuff that doesn't change between examples, and then you can declare, and it oddly works.
right. That sounds so backwards.
It does sound so backwards, but check this out. I first saw this because of if you guys have used Pundit. Pundit is awesome. These guys came up with a really nice pattern for testing Pundit specs, which I love. And this is where it's really useful. So they use a subject block, which behaves almost exactly like let, as far as I can tell. And then it has a user and an article. They go ahead and they make the article up there. But then the other thing they make each time, and that allows a nice, simple way to have the shared state up there, and then each one. So oddly, like hoisting my stuff up to the top of my spec blocks and then just repeating the state that should be changed in let gets me out of that having to manipulate stuff in them before each block sometimes. I found. Yeah, it's weird.
Interesting. I like that.
It's a little bit mind warping.
Do you ever put your setup into like separate methods? So it's like, for example, if one spec, like one if statement has like 20 lines of setup and like 2 lines of actual text statements, do you usually put the setup in separate methods and just?
Yeah, I try not to do any setup inside of it. Yeah, I try. Sometimes I will. I used to do more, and I try to keep my its to one spec line, but I don't always. Sometimes I do multiples. I think it makes sense sometimes too.
These ones stupid. So like ideally, it's better to do multiples, but performance-wise, you only want to set it once. So don't do all the expenses just one hit statement.
Yeah, that's why you should be using like before all.
Yeah.
I would argue. You know, yeah, right? I mean, there's a tool. If you want to do it, there's a tool for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really good about smells. Like if you're not just having this beautiful, like, you know, describe before it, you know, then you should be thinking of like, how can I push stuff to the top of the test? How can I kind of break my tests up in a way that more reflects the setup I'm doing?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing a lot of different setup, like that just sounds to me like different contexts or different describe blocks.
Well, if you do say a feature test, which requires lots of things, one to go after the other.
Yes, that is a pain in the ass. Yeah.
Have you thought about how you break those things to have smaller blocks? Because I mean, I had just huge, massive things with like 20 specs that goes in one.
Yeah, you know, I don't do that actually. For some reason I know what you mean. I think I've seen like expect that to happen, expect that to happen, expect that to happen. And I just always, partly is I don't I don't test every single possible like path when I do like capybara. But I've been able to avoid that somehow. Mostly by just continually trying to refactor and break things up into more described. Like I'll happily have like lots of like a long flat test.
Yeah.
With lots of describe blocks.
And you would have like a before all that set up the condition.
Yeah, totally.
That's
Yeah.
the problem, though. Like when the 20th line depends on 1 through 19th line happening, you can't do that.
I would say then like 1 through 19 should somehow be factored into like a before each somewhere
So I need to test each of those things as well.
in a separate file. Almost sounds like maybe. Yes. Sounds like you're trying to do too much.
I mean, we have lost structure.
Yeah, and I mean exactly. And you know, sometimes these things are just the way they are, and like trying to make it perfect is just too much. And the reality is, if you have a functioning test suite with good coverage that people are disciplined about keeping up to date and running, it's like those small things seem pretty minor. Like overall, frankly, because it's a lot worse. Like if the test suite runs, right? I'm working on a project now. The test suite is like 17 minutes, and it sucks, man. It sucks.
You think that's bad?
Yeah, okay. Oh, really? Yeah,
That's cute.
really? Yeah, 17 is shitty. But I've heard people to like 45. Yeah.
That's cute as well.
Oh man, yeah. So that I think okay. So that might be. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that might be a little bit of a smell. Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's talk about external and some stuff. Let's talk about external services because this is fun. I think it's actually. So we're all pretty advanced here. Let's see how far we can get. So the first thing is we need to build an external. We need to go to our station and we need to call some public API. And I was trying to think of. We try the bar API. And then we pass a validation with basic auth, I think.
I'm gonna run out.
All right, man.
Good to see you though.
Yeah, you too.
We'll catch up.
Yeah, for sure.
Cheers.
Yes.
All right. Good night, guys.
See ya. Okay, so that's just too much. I don't want to dig into that. I think actually. Yeah. Does anyone know real quick? We don't need to mess with an API.
There should be like some. Oh yeah, what's that one that does cursors?
Yeah. Favorite list. No swearing API, programmable web.
I'm just going to do it. Oh, this is not working. Let's get something outside.
How do you use this then?
Let's try that out.
This doesn't really look right. Here we go. This is what we want.
Okay. Cool.
And then I got to figure out how to use this.
So I'm using that HTTP.
Yeah, might as well. And use the built-in And we're going to call this URI, mysterious URI parts thing to get ourselves a URI object. And we're going to say stupid. That is not a cuss word. We're going to keep it clean for RailsSchool here. I should probably use some quotes. Cool. What else do I want to do with this? Station.pi call.to equal. I just want it to fire. I don't really care what happens. So this should hit this thing. And we probably won't even be able to tell in our tests. But we might be able to tell, we might be able to see a slowdown. So let's just go ahead and run the station specs. Name is not available. I messed up the thing. Get rid of that stuff. Expected true got nil. Cool, interesting. It took 0.2 seconds for our test to run. And let's just comment this out and let's see. Interesting, the API call seems to have taken the longest amount of time, which we'd expect if it's actually making a server run trip. Yeah, it looks like actually not. So one thing we could do is we could totally stub this method, right? And if your API call is just one method, then that'd be what I would do. I would just stub it. But most of the time with APIs, we need to do like more than a couple things. Last time I did this actually was with SendGrid's API. I was writing a little service to like look at people who, for RailsSchool actually, people on the noise bridge email list constantly mark our emails as spam in SendGrid. So we have a little worker that goes in there and quietly unmarks them as spam. Nice. But also unsubscribes, make sure that we don't send that user. Yeah, so we leave the user alone, but we also like, because we don't want it to ruin our, because it's not spam. It's from the noise bridge list. No, actually what happens is it shows up as actually being like the noise bridge email list. And so the noise bridge doesn't get ours. That's what happens. People subscribing to the noise bridge email list mark the RailsSchool forward as spam, and then SendGrid refuses to send our stuff to like noise bridge announce anymore, and we think that's lame, so we go ahead and like just like tidy it up.
So I mean, I don't get too deep, but how do you unmark it as spam?
They have this facility.
Oh, so it's via SendGrid.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're like, I think if you go in and deal with the spam, I don't know. Somehow they allow you to like fix it. Yeah. So I wrote, and so I had to make like 4 API calls, and I had a little service that was doing this, and I wanted to make sure it worked. And so I needed to actually make myself more of a mock of SendGrid than just a few methods like returning true. I want to make sure that thing worked, and that future changes didn't break it. Has anyone actually done this type of thing before? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, mocking like another API. Okay, cool. What did you use?
We did an Angular. So
oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. What do you use in Angular for? Cool.
I think Angular actually found a pretty good test this week. We tried to mock those services.
Nice.
Because in Angular, what you do is you inject.
Everything's a freaking API to Angular, so it's probably that's going to be the first best thing in Angular. Yeah.
Because in Lego, you basically inject everything into surfaces.
Yeah, totally.
You have like an injectable carcass of a certain type of things.
Oh, sweet. Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, I've done some Angular, but I didn't really do any tests.
That's still ouch.
So this is, in my opinion, the gospel of how to do this. ThoughtBot, we love ThoughtBot. And there's, remember this, I'm gonna put this in the, because really, if you take one thing for tonight and step up your game, like stub out your external services, don't make any external service request calls in your test suite. Your life will be a lot better. And there's 3 basic ways to do it. First is a gem called WebMock. WebMock allows you to do nice things. First, it enables you to like disable all of the external connections and allows you to simply mock connections based on basically based on your in your RSpec config file. And WebMock will handily, when it fails on an external request, give you the generated line it needs to mock out the request it stopped you from trying to make. So it can be pretty easy for simple stuff. I found it really awesome, you know, if you're like just doing like what we're doing right here, WebMock would be perfect. Actually, we could step out them, but you know, a couple of simple methods like that, it works pretty well. It gets kind of hard to do it kind of more robustly because, you know, you got to handle these headers and sometimes you get pretty crazy responses and you got to get everything right. VCR, on a project now that's using VCR. VCR is like the big, heavy framework. And what you do, it has this concept of cassettes, and so it's weird. You tell VCR which tests it should record. The first time the test runs, it hits an external service. It allows you to hit that service. VCR actually records what happens in a cassette, and then a future test that plays that back. So it just happens auto-magically, but it can be a little bit hard to set up, right? Harder to manage, things like that. You wouldn't do it for a small thing like that, but VCR is pretty awesome.
So I'm looking at what Bob suggesting. They say you build your own fake little Sinatra application.
And I have done that, and that's what I've done. It's super, super easy.
Is that like what's so great about that as opposed to? I don't know.
Good question.
Yeah.
Let's check this out. So I did it for the RailsSchool site, I'm pretty sure. So let's look at my implementation of it. Okay, here's my fake send grid. So I made 3. Let's look at.
So you only use that one API on Sinatra. Yeah.
And I actually use WebMock too.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is this Cambridge?
No, I'm sorry. This is RailsSchool. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Gamebridge is up front.
It's that group sitting at the table?
There's 2 meetings. There's a membership meeting, but there's also Gamebridge.
Oh.
I know they're there because I waited for them
I
outside.
didn't see Unity on anybody's laptop.
I know the code, right? Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I think they're up there.
So is
I
it
didn't
something
see
that
Alex. I didn't see Alex, huh?
do they build games in Unity?
Yeah, C# and Unity.
There's a dude in a hoodie with like green horizontal stripes who I think is teaching it.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I don't think it's a normal dude.
Cool.
Sorry, yeah, good luck.
Cool.
So-
So you make this for guys mode, you're like, what's that curiosity to see what it looks like?
Yeah, totally. I'm just looking right now here how to see how cool. So they're stubbing it. to a rack app. So this is pretty cool. So they're wiring this up. They're using in the config file, they're using WebMock plus Sinatra to stub it like that, and I'm using it, and I'm just doing basically the exact same thing here in my particular file, just to keep the boilerplate out of the config file.
So this is interesting. This Sinatra, is that its own app? It looks like it's still part of the Rails app.
No, it's Sinatra. It's a Sinatra app. Are you familiar with Sinatra?
So I know what it is.
Cool.
I haven't actually used it. Or maybe I've used it like in some small demo app. But how do you integrate that into your Rails app? Is that running its own thing?
Yeah, Sinatra is a rack app.
Right.
So what's happening here is WebMock is stubbing out any request to api.sendgrid.com to fake SendGrid. And because SendGrid is a rack app, fake SendGrid descending from Sinatra, it's going to pick up this request
I see.
right here.
I guess my confusion is the actual file itself, like fake SendGrid.
Yep.
I guess that's nested within your Rails app directory.
Yes.
Okay. So what we're doing is we're spinning up a Sinatra app inside of the Rails app. I mean, not on the rack, but like within.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's.
So here's the question. Is there a reason why we don't make it inherit just from like Rails active whatever base?
Yeah.
How do they put this for Sinatra?
Because we are from Sinatra base.
Yeah. Yeah, so I see within Sinatra base. Is it because it's faster than using whatever the Rails base?
Because it's fucking light, or it's lighter. Because if we it'd be really hard to write a functioning Rails app in 5 lines.
So, yeah.
Really hard. Maybe you could. I don't think you could.
Like it sounds like if Rails already does what Sinatra does, I'm just including Sinatra.
Yep. Remember, Sinatra's just a gem, just like Rails. It's not running during production. It just, and it's not really doing much. Really, what it's doing is we're just have a thin shim to intercept requests to this API to just have this piece of code respond to them, which is really tiny. And because it's Sinatra, we're just getting this nice little bit, this nice little DSL here, and the rack adapter. So we don't. So this is returning an HTTP response just like a server would. So we're getting that full robust mocking of that. But we don't have the huge overhead of having Rails or another server running or things like that. Yeah, I really prefer this. Here's a couple other. Looks like I have, and I have the JSON response in a file. So where did I put that? Codewars.json. So I like that, right? I mean, look, pretty fat, rich, stubbing. So I have a lot of stuff I can play with. Here's my SendGrid. And I just ripped this off actually from SendGrid. Like, right, when I do this developing, and I just build my little fake here until I'm confident it works exactly the same, and then I just mock it. And I like this because I feel like I'm testing real actual functionality. I'm not faking it by stubbing it out, because I know that this thing is behaving exactly the same as if it was live. But I don't have that round trip call.
Yeah, so exactly as live, except without legally authentication.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, there's also, we want to be nice to these people who make their APIs available to us. Hitting their stuff during tests is kind of lame. So next time you have kind of a medium heavy dependency on these external services, I definitely encourage you to look at using Sinatra to stub requests. Also VCR. I think if you have an app with like a lot of different or frequent use of external APIs that are core, I would look at VCR. It's been a pretty nice experience.
So VCR is accomplishes the same sort of thing, but it's a different way of doing it.
What VCR did, VCR is pretty different. What it does is, you tell VCR, you turn it on per kind of block, describe or hit or whatever. And then VCR will watch the first time that block runs. Any external API calls, it'll let them go through once. It'll actually record what happens and save it in either a YAML or an XML file. And then in subsequent ones, it'll just like play that back. So it just happens. And I really like that too. So you could write your test against the live thing. And then for actual testing, it doesn't, but you don't, it's free, you do nothing. Yeah, VCR is super cool. Like it's definitely the Cadillac, but if you're gonna be doing a fair amount of external services in your app, I think it's pretty key. The one downside is sometimes you can forget to like force VCR to re-record stuff. You know, if like you're doing something and you change like an URL or something like that, or you decide, we had a thing where they changed something and the test failed because it wasn't returning the right count of things and forgot that you just had to update the cassette. You had to get VCR to re-record. So there's that. So it's a little opaque, but I mean, this is kind of opaque too, this fake Code Wars thing. I mean, you'd have to know where to go look to see where this, in some ways you could argue this is like pretty, really opaque because I'm acting a lot like, the service here. I'm returning a lot of JSON that looks legit. So.
And what's the process like when an API changes? You just have to, I mean, I guess with Snapchat, you kind of go all in one place, which is great.
Yeah.
You can change exactly like this does. With VCR, I guess, how would you, just have to be on top of it.
You re-record, basically you delete the cassette and it forces it to re-record. Yeah. You have to be on top of it. Hopefully API maintainers are not breaking their APIs.
Right.
Maybe they're adding stuff, but they shouldn't be changing stuff that's already out there, theoretically. But unfortunately, if that happened though, you would have breakage in production, or at least hopefully in development, because your test's going to catch it because they'd be testing against that fake version that no longer matches reality.
Yeah, that's on the
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You're not vigilant.
Yep.
Your test will be past green and actually be great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, the solution is not to hit stuff in tests, for sure. I would say, like, if you're really worried about that, I would have some other rake task that, like, does some, like, sanity check on APIs, like, once every few months or something.
I like it.
Yeah, because, if you, and hopefully, also, that's another kind of smell, I'd say. It's like, if you're heavily dependent on an API that you don't trust to, like, not pull the rag out from under you, then you're probably going to have a hard time anyway.
Yeah.
I would have been there, and it sucks. And sometimes it's the only thing we have. But like SendGrid, I don't worry about mocking them because I'm pretty sure they have their API version. I'm pretty sure they're not just gonna like remove method calls or like change the parameters or the name of something just randomly. Right? We all know now to version APIs, right? So. Cool. Well, I got to where I wanted to get, and I'm kind of inclined to wrap up a few minutes early and hit the train. So, any final questions from anybody? Or cool. Hope you all are having a good time. I'm not sure what the next class is. We haven't posted it yet, but we're really good. So, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.